episode of Billy Watson TV. It gives me great pleasure to have back on a guest who has appeared more times than any other guest of the show. He is well known for his Beatles research, but has also delved into many other topics over the years. And we'll get into whatever comes up in our free-flowing conversation today. Welcome to the show, Mike Williams, otherwise known as Saint Quay. Welcome to the show, Mike Williams, otherwise known as Saint Quay.
Well, hello everyone and welcome to Billy Watson TV. As the video just said, we have on a returning guest. The most times I've had anyone on the show by far. It's my old friend Mike Williams. How are you doing today, Mr. Sage of Quay?
Hi, Billy. That was a great intro. Was that done with AI?
It was done with AI. I do use the
It was very creative.
Yeah, basically I've been spending, I think we talked previously before coming on air there, I've not been doing so many live shows in the past 8 to 10 months because I went down a rabbit hole. I shared a video recently, and in that video, because I've been banned from everywhere else, I decided, basically my girlfriend showed me this app that can turn my lyrics, because I've got a few poetry books and another kind of comedy book, into a song just by putting the lyrics in, and a song pops out. You choose the genre and out it comes. And although I'm not a huge fan of AI and the demiurge and exactly the whole thing behind it, I did think it was an interesting way to try and get my lyrics out there and to showcase them in a different way. And so I spent 8 months basically on a labour of love, basically doing 4 different books. I've basically much finished the 4 books. And I've got a 5th one I'm working on finishing editing, and then I'll do that as well. And it's quite a unique experience to go through, especially the one I've got called Politically Corrected. It's like comedy script, and it goes through different sections in it. Like say football is broken down into different topics of football, and it just goes through it, playing it all in different styles of music. So it's like an audiobook in music.
Okay.
And it's that, and also basically I've got 2 versions of every book. So again, it's taken me forever, but that's what I've been doing while I've been barred from everywhere else. So I'm popping out the hole a wee bit just now. But yeah, AI is quite interesting and fun to play with.
No, it is. And I've always said that using it as a part of the creative process is great. It's just like technology in general. Phones could be very good, very useful if it wasn't for all the surveillance.
Yeah.
So, and everything else that's involved with technology, when it's applied for the wrong reasons, it's not a good thing. But if it were applied for positive things in our life, it would be wonderful. So, I mean, I use AI once in a while. I have a website that I use where I generate the thumbnails for my videos. And that got me away from hunting and pecking on searches to use images that might be copyrighted.
Yeah.
So if you use the AI, you eliminate that risk or that possibility of using something that, might be copyrighted. But, before we got started here, before the show, I mentioned that I put a video up of yours where you were giving a little talk from your car about what you have bumped up against with being banned and ostracized from the comedy clubs. And I thought, before we get to what my input on things, I really wanted to talk a little bit with you about what's going on there, and so that the audience has a clear understanding of the censorship, the level of censorship that's taking place, even in comedy clubs.
Well, basically, I made this video. My girlfriend was in the hospital, so I had an hour to kill when she had this appointment. And basically, I was trying to tell people about this work I've been doing, because I find it very hard to get people interested. I interview so many people. I mean, to be honest, I don't see anyone else, definitely in Scotland, probably the UK, and the world, that's done what I've been doing. You know, I do stand-up comedy. I've done it with Katie Hopkins and stuff like that, and uncensored comedy gigs. I've done 300, 400, I don't know, quite a lot of shows over the years, more for Edinburgh Festival shows. I do serious poetry. I do funny poetry. I've interviewed all these people. I had a shoot in the shit show. You know, I make video blogs and we travel into different places. I've wrote 4 books and I'm basically turned them on to music. And I can't get anyone to pay. Well, basically, Vimeo, they took my channel down, and then that basically took 10,500 videos off me. So I spent, again, the best part of 2 years just trying to get that back up to speed. And I'm spending, you know, still time doing that as well. But basically, I can't get anyone to come and support me. And people will invite me sometimes. They're inviting me to protest groups as well. And I'm spending 2 or 3 days researching topics, writing a whole poem that takes like 8 minutes to read. So it's quite an effort. And then I turn up, and everyone there just starts talking to each other, and they're selling T-shirts and talking in the corner, and like it's just like, what's the actual point of this?
Yeah.
The other acts are turning up and they're just playing cover songs, and that's it, and off they go. And like, I've invested time and energy into this. Does anyone actually give a fuck? What is the point of these groups? Are they doing it to actually raise awareness or to talk about these things, or is it just some people latch onto something and that's my thing? And I just don't get it. People, to me, are completely fucked in the heat. The majority of the people, like even in the so-called awake community, I find it difficult to, you know, talk, because again, some of the topics I've been well down the rabbit holes. I'm not saying I'm a great deep researcher, but 30 years ago I got into all this, you know, way back when nobody else was, and I was really getting pointed at fingers then, and you lost friends back then. And I've spent time in Turkey where I never had a full time job, and every day I was listening to all this stuff because I knew something would happen one day. And then that COVID happened, and then I started doing these live shows where all this information was coming out. So, you know, I'm quite well versed in it, but I just find people, maybe a lot have woke up since COVID and it's still at a surface level. And I don't know, I guess there's different levels of consciousness and we're all at different stages. And anyway, what was I talking about? I'm talking about this video I made. I only put it up on Substack as well. I was going to share it on Facebook and other places, but I don't know, I was kind of a little bit embarrassed about it, but I thought I'd made it, so I'll share it anyway. I was going to just talk about, I've made these books, come to my website, you might enjoy it, you know, because it's like 4 books all turned to music, and I go around listening to it just to double check the AI's made them all right. So I'm doing a postman job. My body's getting wear and tear. I'm in quite a great deal of pain. I would rather spend my time writing a poem and every day and talking about these topics and turn them to music and letting people get some kind of, you know, turn the pain into joy in art is my kind of philosophy, not just share memes and wallow in misery all the time. So I'm trying to do something positive with it, but I can't get any support for it. So the video started off, you know, intentionally just, I've done this project to come and take a look, £5 a month, or you can buy them individually, but you can get them all for a £5 a month, and then you just watch them in 1 month and then cancel it. And, you know, that would be something, because I'm not doing it just for myself. But then I went on a bit of a rant. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I put it up in Substack and you were kind enough to share it. It just, yeah, I feel as though I'm pissing in the wind and talking to myself most of the time.
Well, you shouldn't be embarrassed about doing the video at all, because it came from the heart, and it's the reality of the situation of people that come out and try to wake people up with the truth. And most people, the vast majority of the population, don't want to know the truth. It's like the movie A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. Talking to the average John Q. public, they can't handle it. They're just too dumbed down, too apathetic, and they're too conditioned and cemented into the illusion, into the false, fake reality, and they can't step out of it. And it is very frustrating. I haven't had the same level of frustrations that you have had, because it has to be very difficult when you're doing stand-up comedy to try to get gigs. And when you get the gigs, you are browbeaten to perform a certain way, to censor yourself, not only by the venue, but you were saying by the other comedians as well. So we have this phenomenon. We talked about this before we hit the record button here. But sometimes people will say, "Well, how could the controllers police everybody?" Well, they don't have to police everybody because they have the hive mind population so conditioned that they will do the policing on behalf of the police state, of the controllers. And that's the example we have with you and going to do your comedy gigs at these comedy clubs. So maybe you can just expand a little bit more on what types of issues you bumped up against when you went to go do your gigs.
Yeah, I mean, I've got so many stories. Like, I spent time in Turkey, so I came back and I went to a comedy course that was run by this well-known comedian, a girl who's just been. See, Billy Connolly, I don't know if you know much about him, but he was quite the revolutionary back in the day. He kind of broke a lot of barriers with stand-up comedy. So he's actually got Parkinson's disease now and he's quite ill. But there's this thing called the Spirit of Billy Connolly Award at this Glasgow Comedy Festival. It's, as far as I can see, been taken over by Wookiees. But because it's had 3 winners of this festival. And this girl who I'm talking about, who was running this course, she got nominated this year. But she was running this course when I came back. And now in the past, she's seen me do a comedy set, and she sent me this clip on Facebook. It's actually on my website as a kind of, I've got a feedback where people have praised me or whatever. And she says, "You came last night, you totally rocked. I love your political stance. Whatever you do, don't stop." So I went back just to make contact with her. I didn't need to go to this beginner's level course. I was paid 120 quid for 6 weeks just to kind of, because I was in Turkey and isolated, so I couldn't do it there. And I was hoping to kind of talk to her, maybe make some gigs for her. But in the second week, we had this task to do where we all got a newspaper and split into pairs. And the guy I was with, he chose this thing to do in the Holocaust. So he went up and performed it. And then after it, the teacher was like, "Oh, well done. At least you didn't deny the Holocaust. At least you didn't question it." So I was like, well, hold on a minute. Regardless of the topic, surely we should question anything. Why can't you question it? "Oh, you can question some things, but you can't question that. The audience will just turn against you and hate you." And I've been to a switch. "Do you believe in the Holocaust?" So she turns it on me. And basically, this is the thing. I tried to talk to somebody about this topic yesterday, and I've been well down those rabbit holes and looked into Ernst Strundle and, John Irvin and all these kinds of people. Nick Kolestrom, I can't pronounce the names right, but, these people have done in-depth research into anomalies that from the official story. So rather than go into them, I just said, I think there's more to know than the official story. That's all I said. Then this other guy pops up, "You better shut up, Billy, or me or you are going outside." So I'm thinking to myself, well, now who's the Nazi? How quickly they change, But anyway.
So he wanted you to step outside to what? To have a fight?
Aye.
What an idiot.
Basically, because he had family members there, blah, blah, blah. And yesterday I'm trying to talk, to this guy at work, because there's this band Kneecap who are getting banned from everywhere, cancelled these days. They're an Irish rap band because they're kind of supporting Hamas. And I think Hamas was kind of set up by Israel to, create the situation which has allowed them to go into Gaza or whatever just now. It's all part of the big psyop. But again, that's layers that most people can't begin to get into. So these guys might be supporting them quite naively or whatever. We're just saying they're trying to support the Gaza victims or whatever, but they're getting cancelled because you can't support genocide, go against genocide. But basically, he just completely shut that conversation down and says, "All right, we're not talking about this anymore." Poof. And it's like, but where's the rational debate? So, yeah, that incident in that particular comedy course, I had to say, right, I'll be the one to leave. I'll lose 100 quid. And, you just can carry on your course without me, because the guy was saying, "Oh, we're all quitting," or whatever, if Billy comes back. So then my name went on the circuit, and I'm getting sent emails from people saying, "I hear you're anti-Semitic, blah, blah, blah. And then take your pictures of kindly, out the goodness of your heart, taken of me, take them down from the internet because I don't want to be associated with you." So that's all one story. And then recently I got invited to speakeasy gigs. So I was performing with Katie Hopkins and Andrew Lawrence and Alistair Williams and various other kind of, could say, controversial comedians these days, but ones that are talking about real issues, So I'd done this joke at one of them, I mean, it isn't even that particularly funny. I'm not attached to this joke. Just there's a First Minister in Scotland who is of Pakistani origin, Hamza something or other. I try not to remember these guys' names, because I don't listen to them very much. But anyway, he had this particular speech, and then before he became First Minister, where he said, in Scotland, the Chief of Police, he's white. The Chief of Education, he's white. The Chief of blah, 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 they're white. Head of this, he's white. I was like, well, you're in Scotland, mate.
Exactly.
What do you expect? And,
If you don't want that situation, go back to Pakistan.
Well, that's what we're comparing, because now there's lots of like councils and mayors and all the rest of it, all Muslim. It's like Muslim takeover, And again, I'm married to Muslims in my past, so it's not like I'm anti-Muslim.
Right.
I'm just anti-organised religion, because they're all fucking insane. But anyway, I just made this joke where you hear Hamza, he's changing Scotland's national anthem. And people are like, what? I said, I'm going to change it to the Sly and the Family Stone song, Don't Call Me Nigger Whitey. Right, so it is, now I'm just quoting a song title there, and just having a bit of fun with it, and it got a little laugh at this kind of speakeasy gig where it's uncensored comedy, And then I'd done an open mic night locally, so I thought I'd try it there. And I tried it, and it was kind of tumbleweeds, so like, all right, it's not a political crowd tonight, no. So I just carried on with the set and got through it all right. Then this comedian after, it's like, Billy, you're good stuff, but you just can't say the N-word. You can't say the N-word. You've got this big gig coming up in Aberdeen. If you go to Aberdeen and say the N-word, you'll never get fucking back. So fair enough, right? So anyway, I went up to Aberdeen, and the guy put me on, this big promoter, who also put on this other guy called Stephen Hughes, who's an Australian comedian who's quite famous for being a little bit controversial. Now, he was saying the N-word in his tour every night, the real N-word, and getting away with it because he's making money from him. But anyway, I was up to Aberdeen before I went to see Stephen, because I've interviewed him and kind of friends with him, and I've seen him do this after I'd been barred, because I went up there, he put me on with this headliner who was an actual doctor. So literally all the audience is NHS members. And beforehand, he was saying he likes controversial comedy. He likes Katie Hopkins, he likes Stephen Hughes, and he likes other ones. So I was like, all right, I wasn't planning on it, but maybe I'll try some of this controversial comedy. So I changed this joke where I then started telling this joke in Aberdeen, where I went on stage in Falkirk, a local town, and I said the N-word. Right? So I never said the original joke. I just said I said the N-word. And basically, I don't know if I can say that here. Can I say it? I'm going to say it. I'm going to say the N-word. I went, Nicola, because I meant Nicola Sturgeon, because she's fucked up the country. She got everyone vaccinated and stuff. So again, I done a second speakeasy gig, and I done that joke where I done the N-word and I said Nicola. That got a huge laugh, because it was a kind of politically charged kind of environment. But in the normie world, a few people laughed. It did get a bit of a laugh, but obviously the NHS staff weren't too behind it. And then I had Nicola in my head and said, all right, Nicola, because she said this, remember this, she said, basically, she says I'm Scotland's mammy. I feel like I'm Scotland's mammy. And then and then she tried to kill everyone. So the next day, he gets an email and basically sends me this email, because I was booked for 2 nights. And in the email, it says, why did you have such a controversial comedian on? Me and my 8 friends came last night and will not be going back to your club. We've had a bad image of your club, we'll never be back. So he sent me that and nothing else. And I was like, well, do you want me to come tonight or not? Basically, I've got a hotel here, I can leave it and get money back. And then he sends me another message a couple of years later. By the time I couldn't cancel the hotel, it says, can you come and introduce the other acts? I've got 2 other people on to replace you. And I'm just to go up and say, oh, here's Joe, here's this guy, and then get off the stage and not do any material. I was like, no, I'll fuck off back. If the 300-mile trip I've got to go, I'll fuck off. No, thanks very much. Then again, later on, he's got Steve Hughes doing this other joke every night, saying nigger, nigger, nigger,
And there's no problem.
No problem at all, because he's a name and he can make it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I was hilariously funny that night, because it was a very difficult situation but people talk about Bill Hicks or your George Carlins, who's not exactly who he's made out to be, but those types of comedians are missing from today's society. Where are the ones that challenge or in the spirit of Billy Connolly, Billy Connolly himself says he would get cancelled these days. So the guy who just won the recent Billy Connolly Award, he's got a video of him, and Billy Connolly has to comment on his video. He had this other one, the lady that won the first year, Janie Godley. She was on saying everybody must get jabbed, and like I done a whole half-hour rant about her because it was fucking outrageous what she was saying. Next thing, she's got cancer and died. I was going on again when I was during COVID, getting lots of abuse from the comedians on this comedy forum site because I'm telling them not to get jabbed. Two of them had strokes and have came back from it, thankfully. But nobody's getting. I'm the bad guy for pointing this out. And then this other guy recently said, "Oh, there's this trans issue, but I know nothing about trans, so therefore I'm going to talk about slugs under my bin." And then Billy Connolly's got to say, "Oh, I liked your bit about slugs under the bin." Where's the fucking spirit of Billy Connolly? Where is the fucking And I entered it a couple of years ago when I did manage to get in the comedy festival, and I sent this whole 40-minute bit about why I should win it, but I'm not going to get enough gigs to get a reputation because another one that won the second year, Susie McCabe, she basically is on Newsnight, defending the trans thing and all this, and you're, a trans hater if you want to stand up for women's rights and stuff like that, So it's all inverted like everything else, and the cliqueiness and, all the rest of it. Like, I'm not saying I'm the funniest ever, but I could hold my own. But again, I'm not allowed to do the type of comedy I want to do. I can't be myself, so I don't want to fucking do it anyway,
Yeah, so if you can't be yourself, then you're not in your natural
And let me
state.
just finish. I went back from the Aberdeen gig, and then I'd done it locally. The guy let me back before I got banned officially in Falkirk after I'd done to the normies, and I explained to him about Aberdeen. I was going to do this Nicola joke again with the N-word. And I said, no, I tried to do my whole set, and I said, I have to be a little bit controversial. I'm nearly finished. But I went to Aberdeen. I can't help myself. I went to Aberdeen, and I said the N-word. And then basically, I never even got allowed to get to the Nicola joke. Basically, the compere and this other comedian says, that's enough. I was like, and this other comedian who's, they're both, I'm not a fan of them, shall we say. One of them was ranting about viruses and these various pandemics that have been over the course of history, and I could have easily said, you're talking shite, mate, get off the stage. I disagreed with what he was saying, but I let him say his piece and I didn't interrupt him. But when I started saying that, that's enough, get off the stage, and they threw me off the stage before I could finish the joke. So that's the last time I've fucking tried to get on any of them, because then after he says, you've said it before. It's like, so we can learn, we can change, we can, and basically, I've not actually shared the clip yet because I've got all this in video. I've got all these gigs in video, but I've been doing this AI work, and I'm actually thinking of writing poems to talk about all this to try and again turn it into art. But I could go on a rant like I have just now. But I'm fighting the forces, and they can all just fuck off as far as I'm concerned, because it's an absolute farce. Comedy my arse.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, even when you're on that forum and they're on you about telling them not to take the vax, and then that
was unreal.
And you've got a couple of them, a couple that that have strokes or became sick or debilitated, they still can't figure it out.
Yeah, I know.
They still cannot connect the dots back to what did I do that could have possibly have caused this health problem for me.
Something there. I can go one better because I've got a very close person in my life, and told him not to take it. Took the first one, got Bell's palsy. Took the next one, took the booster, cancer of the esophagus, an operation to move his stomach to here. 8 batches of chemo, major grief, couldn't eat, getting his throat open all the time. Next time, back in hospital, fainted, cancer of the brain, and you've been told now we can't treat you, and if you have a heart attack, you're on DNR, that's it, way back home. And he's going to donate his body to medical science because he still thinks he's done a great job and he deserves his body after fucking doing all that to him. And you know what I mean? It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, I have people in my extended family that went, not my immediate family, but the extended family that took the shots, and there have been all kinds of problems, neurological problems where they have numbness in their extremities, blood clots, situations with the heart, cardiovascular system.
I don't feel the same since I've taken it. I get that quite a lot when I do bring up this topic these days.
But the problem is, and my daughter has a lot of information on this stuff, and she has a number of people within her circle of friends and associates and acquaintances that have had problems because they just went out, took the shots, took the boosters, and now they have all kinds of problems. In fact, she was telling me she's got one person that she knows that I guess she's in her mid-30s, mid to late 30s, and she took the shots and the boosters, and she has been diagnosed with heart failure. And she's in her mid-30s.
Yeah, it's happening all the time.
So this thing, though, Billy, where you're being ostracized and blackballed for speaking the truth or just having free speech, this goes to show that we don't have free speech.
No, not at all.
There is no free speech. There is that whole cancer culture mentality. And there's cancer culture both on the left and there's cancer culture on the right. On the right, it has to do with being referred to or being called an anti-Semite. Right? That's cancer culture as well, because if you talk about Israel, you talk about Zionism, or you talk about the Jews, the history and all that stuff, you get labeled an anti-Semite, and you're to be eliminated. You're to be taken off your platforms and deplatformed so that you lose your voice.
Yeah, if you mention something like that, simple as that, that's
Yeah.
anti-Semite. I'm just trying to talk about facts.
Right. Right. Well, that's the thing. People are not interested in facts. People, they embrace the programming, the conditioning that has been pounded into their heads for decades now. I was talking to John Neames. We did a show going back a number of months ago, and I have I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but I have two sets of encyclopedias that go back into the 1950s. I think one is like 1955, and the other one is 1958. And I think it's the Columbia House Dictionary and the Funk and Wagnall set of dictionaries. I went back to both those reference books, those encyclopedias, and I looked up the Holocaust to see if the Holocaust was in the encyclopedia. And guess what? It was not. There's no mention of the Holocaust in those encyclopedias in the 1950s, which is very interesting, right? Because that's only about 15 years after World War II ended, and there's no mention of it. So even with me discussing what I'm discussing right now, saying that the Holocaust was not in encyclopedias in the 1950s, I'm going to get labeled an anti-Semite.
That's it. They've got this thing where you just bring up the topic and it's bang, you're a bad person, you must be scrubbed.
Yeah.
What happened to debate? It's like the thing, if you can't talk about something, there's something more reason to talk about it. If it's against the law to talk about it, well, maybe that's the thing we should be talking about.
Well, that's the Streisand effect. The Streisand effect says that when you tell somebody not to look at something, not to go someplace, don't be watching that. What's the first thing that a lot of people will do? Like, well, I'm going to go watch it and see what's going on here. So the biggest catalyst to, quote, anti-Semitism are the Zionists and the Jews themselves, because they're constantly ranting about it. And then when we take a look at what's going on in Palestine as an example, that's very difficult to look past. You could put as many fluffy, pretty words around why it is that Israel is doing what they're doing to the Palestinians. The truth of the matter is they're murdering men, women, children, bombing schools, bombing hospitals, and just on a killing spree. And then they wonder and they scratch their heads as to why more and more people are questioning the Jewish story, the Jewish history, Jewish motivations, and so on. So, I mean, I don't want to make the show about the Jews, but it's a problem. It's a big problem. Here in the United States, I mean, you're probably well aware, and Donald Trump has basically, he's on a march to eliminate free speech.
Yep.
If you cannot talk about the Jews, you cannot talk, otherwise you're an anti-Semite, and sending people off to the gulag and threatening colleges and universities to withdraw a ton of federal funds if they don't squash anti-Israel, pro-Palestine protests. I mean, this is a killer, because back in the 1960s, the colleges rampant with anti-war protests.
Well, I mean, come on! Like, I don't understand how we've got a world where we're sending $3 billion to support the war effort. Why is there a war in this world? What's
Right,
who's
right.
who's making these weapons? How is this justified in any way, shape, or form? I mean, it's just talking about war as if it's a natural thing. It's like, hold on a minute, it's fucking insanity. Can we have a fucking put the brakes on this one, please? Who's supporting this? It's not a good thing. And people have got the right, and some people are doing it in the UK, to stop paying income tax because it's against the Geneva Convention to support war, and their income tax is going to pay it. So if we all stop paying income tax, how are they going to fund this thing? I mean, Keir Starmer's got foreign investment, and obviously not working for the good of the British people whatsoever. And yeah, I mean, the whole system, as we know, is corrupt to the core. And obviously, Mr. Trump there is part of he's controlled by these same people, and they've got an agenda that's plainly obvious for anyone with eyes to look, but everyone just goes along with it because it's all rules and regulations, or Ofcom or whoever's controlling the governing bodies uses threats to stop your funding or whatever because they print the money, etc. So I mean, it's all a big shit show, and it's all designed to keep us more and more shut up and led into more and more tyranny until people grow a set of balls. But I'll just get straight because they're going to make there's now Britain. You can't access BitShare, you can't access Gab because there's an online safety bill that's coming out to protect the children. Of course, it's always about protecting the children, aye. So that's going to make it so Tony Blair's blabbing on about we'll need a digital ID to even go on the internet. And then, all the cameras are going up everywhere, the facial recognition, because of all the immigrants are coming in, and there's violence in certain areas, so we need these up. And this problem, reaction, solution, etc. You know what I mean? So it's just frustrating when we're one of the few who can seemingly see what's plainly obvious. Once you've had it's like flat Earth or something, when you see the Earth isn't a spinning ball, there's no going back, But some people just, as you say, self-censoring, or the hive mentality, just to keep the walls up and pretend that everything's all right. It's evidently not.
Yeah, and there's two realities. There's the reality where people see the situation for what it really is. They've pierced the veil, and they look behind the curtain, and they see the great Oz with the levers. And then you have the majority of the people, the vast majority of the people that are sitting in their seats watching the puppet show and buying every bit of it. It was interesting. Had the interview, as you know, with Mark Devlin. And when I was putting the show together, I was going through the process of editing the show and, just packaging it. I said, what's Mark's website? So I went on to Brave, and all of these browsers, especially here in the US, they all rely on Google as the foundation of their own searches. So I typed in Mark Devlin. I didn't get the Mark Devlin I spoke to.
Wow.
So,
which is weird, considering how much output he's done over the years,
Exactly. So what I did was I went to Yandex. Yandex is a Russian search engine. I guess it's Russia's version of Google. And I typed in Mark Devlin, and boom, he popped up everywhere. So the level of censorship and shadow banning is incredible. It really
I found
is.
that out myself, I post on Twitter, and I know a few other people are the same, it's just certain people who they want to be an alternative voice, or whatever. This Ian Carroll seems to have popped up out of nowhere talking to Joe Rogan and stuff, or whoever they want, as long as they must obviously be in the gang, they can be the alternative voice. So, and David Icke's talking about recently, the alternative media hijack.
Yeah.
So people are turning away from mainstream media, so they've got their, as I posted this one up earlier, they kind of got their whoever they need to follow as the alternative.
There you go. Right.
Is presented.
Well, it's controlled opposition.
Yeah.
And controlled opposition puts out truth. They do, but it's controlled. They will not steer the car down certain roads. They'll keep from going there. It's like Alex Jones, as an example, is controlled opposition. He keeps talking about the globalists, the globalists, the globalists.
Oh, God.
Alex, who are the globalists? Specifically, who are they? He won't ever say it. In fact, I do have a clip from Alex Jones that goes back. Maybe I'll put it down in the description box. I'll send you the link. Going back years ago, where he did talk about Jewish influence, and he went on a rant about it. And this has to be maybe, I don't know, I'm taking a guess, 10 to 12 years ago. Today, those words would never come out of his mouth.
Yeah. But we talk about Jews, but there's deeper levels to that. There's like Sabbatean Frankists, and then there's
Yes,
the Jesuit order, and there's obviously the Club of Rome, and there's these various
the
organizations.
Kabbalists, yep.
So the Jewish people, they get brought up in this mindset, which obviously isn't very healthy. We are the
Right.
chosen people, etc. But it's not your average Jew. It's what was deemed, the Ashkenazi Jews or the Khazarians or whoever these bloodlines are. They're
Right.
at the top of this, serving this demiurge. I think there's a group of people who have done a deal with the dark side. You know what I mean? So they are using Jewish people as a front almost to take a lot of the heat.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
therefore, again, we talk about that, but layers and layers, so that's the first level of deflection,
Right.
and that stops you getting any further than down the rabbit hole to actually
Right.
get to the real people.
Yeah. So I should clarify that when I talk about the Jews, I'm not talking about your next door neighbor. I'm talking about the elite Jewish control system. It's also known as the Khazarian Mafia. They were the Radnites going back into the medieval times. They controlled the commerce. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. We're talking about the whole faction that I would say is pretty much tied into the Rothschild dynasty. The Kabbalists, the Chabad Lubavitch crowd, right? That are into the Zohar and Jewish mysticism and all of that. So that's what I'm referring to. And what's difficult for many people to really get their arms around is that the control system is run by cultists.
There seemed to be enacting this biblical prophecy as well, whereby it's going to
Yes,
be the Islam and Christians to destroy each other, in some kind of war or whatever, to leave them, and so just them here, and we're all dead. That's like the ultimate planet. It's like a playbook.
I'm going to recommend the channel. It's for a lot of people, it's going to be very controversial. But I've been watching Christopher's content now for a couple of months, and it's
Yeah.
right down the path that you're talking.
I think I've maybe drawn to him, Christopher John Bjertness. I've been talking about him for quite a while. I've got
There you go. There you go.
Aye.
There you go. I think he's done some great work piecing it together.
Well, you see the pictures with Keir Starmer talking to Trump, and how scripted that was. He's playing the part of King Herod, and he's playing this part. It's just like, aye, that's blatantly obvious. That's what's
Right.
going on. You know what I mean? It's like, it's literally theatre.
Right.
It's like,
He talks about the Messiah, son of David, versus the Messiah, son of Joseph, and
Yeah.
Trump's playing the role of the Messiah, son of Joseph, and the number of images and photo ops that we're seeing with Trump with his Jewish entourage, rabbis wearing the yarmulke, is, in my view, over the top, absolutely over the top. And back in, I believe it was 2017, and I remember reading these articles, and maybe we talked about this, Billy. I've talked about it in another show or two. In fact, I did a presentation going back to July of last year, July of 2024, when they had the alleged assassination attempt in Butler, PA, where I talked about Trump's role was going to be. I said he was going to be selected to sit in the White House. I called that way before the election, and his job was going to be to take the people that have a position of nationalism, conservatives,
Patriots.
yep, sovereigns, and to play the role of the Pied Piper, because they believe that that's what he is. They believe he's a nationalist, and he's not. He's not. And his job is to round them all up, get them on board, in a very slick way. I had predicted that he was going to go implement digital currency, and he's talking very much about stablecoin right now, attaching it to the fiat money system, which is interesting, right? Stablecoin. How could it be stable if it's attached to fiat currency? Um, and he was going to march them
Yep.
right into the end zone. And I had said in that video that there was. It's not coincidence that he's the setup to 2030 here in the United States. And then they're talking about trying to figure out a way for him to run for a third term,
Yeah.
which, if they're able to pull that off, which would defy the 22nd Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, um, then he will be the president going into 2030. So, and people can't see this. This whole MAGA crowd is blinded by this this love affair that they have with this guy,
If it's still
and
got it going on, surely the bubble must have burst by now, no?
it's a cult. They can't see it. They can't see it. I had put a post up on Twitter, and when he first introduced the tariffs, and I said the tariffs were going to be an absolute disaster.
Yeah,
I spent 30 years in the corporate world, Billy, in the capacity, in the financial capacity, and what people don't understand is to reverse these tariffs would mean to reverse a decision and a strategy that was implemented over 50 years ago by the New World Order, the controllers, to take the manufacturing base of the United States and move it out.
oh yeah.
That was done intentionally. So to believe that you're going to be able to implement tariffs and bring the manufacturing base back is absurd, absolute absurdity. So when I had mentioned in the post, I said, look, what's going to happen is prices are going to skyrocket, and expect inflation to go even higher than it is today. And some people were pushing back. No, that's not going to happen. He's playing 100D chess.
How dare.
Stop it already. Stop with that nonsense already. Just stop. So the objective is not to bring these companies back, although some will play along and say, "Oh, we'll build a factory here or there." The objective is to collapse the U.S. economy, to put it in such a position, in such dire straits, that now what's going to happen, it's problem, reaction, solution. It's for the government to step forward and say, oh, we're going to have to do this and we're going to have to do that. And, I mean, it's so easy to see. The other thing, too, is not to go on here, I was going back to my July 2024 presentation, and I'll put the link down below. I had said that he had converted to Judaism back during his first term because there were articles in the Israeli mainstream press. I remember reading these articles back in the day saying that he had converted. I mean, his daughter converted.
Did he not get brought up by a rabbi or something like that? He
He,
had a rabbi mentor.
yes. He in his book he said that his rabbi mentor was teaching him the Cabala.
Aye.
That's in one of his books. So, it, why are you learning the Kabbalah? Is it just a hobby? No, it's the Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism. This goes back to the Zohar. It goes back to Chabad Lubavitch, that Jewish sect I mentioned earlier. Their whole thing is Jewish mysticism, the interpretation of the first 5 books of the Bible, not as you would read them, as a layperson would read them, but as it has to do with prophecy, Jewish prophecy,
Yep.
and ultimate control of everything, because they are, quote, God's chosen people, and we're not. So anyway, I just wanted to, I guess the point I'm making is that his role is to lead the outliers, the perceived outliers, to round them up. Yep, there you go, just like you have on that graphic there, and to lead them off the cliff. And what's the cliff? The cliff is going into 2030. 2030 is a huge, huge milestone within the Agenda 21 overall project plan. So, digital currency, as I mentioned before, talking about stablecoin. The whole thing now with free speech, if you can't protest Israel, you can't say anything negative about Israel, and when people are silly because they think that, well, okay, these are just foreigners, even though some of them are naturalized citizens of the United States that they're looking to jettison out of the country. But it's that they're just starting there. You know what I'm saying? That's
Right.
the starting point. That's the low hanging fruit. What
Yeah.
they're doing right now is conditioning people to accept that as normal.
This is what Christopher John Bjartner says, that basically Greenland, what America's talking about taking over, is going to be like the new Siberia for the gulags.
Yes.
And they'll just start there, and then basically that's where we'll all end up.
And why he was also having the discussions about Canada.
Exactly.
So they're talking about territories north
Yeah.
of us. So now, when I listen to Christopher's to his analysis and his research, I try to be as objective as I possibly can with it. I'm not going to say that I embrace all of it, but I will say this: it's very, very intriguing and very interesting. And I have to admit that there's a lot that he discusses and points out that when you take a look at the landscape and what's going on politically and with Trump and around the world, it fits.
Yep. Yeah, I'm the same. I don't like. He still believes in globe Earth or something like that. And there's a few things that you wonder how some
Yeah,
people can be so awake to some things, but then not see other things. But with regard to his talking about the Bible and
and the
how they're using
Cabala,
this narrative, and yeah, he reads it totally different. Like Christ to him is like no a good guy, he's the
right?
sacrificial one. So we're like, there's lots of movies. There's a quite an interesting channel I discovered on YouTube where it shows you the conditioning that's been going on in a lot of movies, how white people kind of sacrifice themselves for the greater good, or to give it up, and but
Right.
it's actually that's what we're doing. Our kind heart or whatever is kind of getting abused, and uh, we're playing a part of the sacrifice, and
Right.
that's what's happening to Europe right now. It's almost like getting sacrificed. Then in the UK, we talk about Trump. Like Keir Starmer is obviously, if you've got a brain again, I can't even watch him for more than 10 seconds without wanting to be violently sick. But he's that evil and that bad these days. There has to be some kind of reaction to it. So this Reform Party with Nigel Farage, who supposedly, but no, Farage and Keir Starmer are, probably best of buddies, but they're the saviours. So there's an election today, and I believe Reform won this, and it's like a sign of the change. Reform's going to come in and save the day, and I'm just getting total Donald Trump vibes. It's going to be, we'll all get behind Farage, and he'll do the same as what Trump's doing, or whatever. Because again, this whole thing of who we're going to vote for now, we'll vote and give our power to that person, or we'll give our power to that. What about taking our power back and drawing a line around your village and saying everyone else fuck off, we're looking after ourselves now, because the capitalistic bullshit agenda is no work panning out for us. So we'll cut down the 5G towers because they can be used at any time to get turned up, and everyone, the vaccine in them, the metals can keel over. We'll take down the facial recognition, we'll stop playing the ULEZ game, and we'll take some ownership. Oh, but the land's owned, it's all to do with the legal name and registering, and again, they've got the game sewn up, but they provide these so-called solutions of voting somebody else into power because nobody's stopping and taking responsibility for jack shit.
Right.
I can't do it. Like, I'm not saying I could do it, but I'm trying to get people talking, or by doing these shows, we're trying to hopefully sow seeds in people so that they talk to their friends and awareness raises, and then we can collectively do something. But instead, we'll get very much isolated in our TV and our wee box and our routines of the job, and nobody's actually discussing what's actually going on. It's like the old frogs in the boiling water thing. So yeah, we've got to be careful with these new political parties springing up and all these other solutions that are getting given to us, whereby it's time to see the game for what it is. But I don't know. I actually think there's a guy called Chief Ironbush who is quite an interesting character. He was on the Archaic show, and I've kind of followed him since that. And he's kind of got this elder knowledge, and he talks about things in a different ways. Like almost, he says 2040 is a time for a big rapture, and the rapture's like when the electromagnetic kind of vibe of the Earth stops for 30 minutes, and lots of stuff floats up, and we're here right now in an individual quest almost to purge yourself. And some people are going to make it through this, and some people won't. And because it seems like there has been a lot of resets, and you just wonder if they know there's a reset coming. They talk about the Great Reset. Is that a diversion? Are they blocking out the sun because maybe there's another sun coming back? They talk about the kind of Nibiru and stuff like that. Is there a different kind of awakening that they're trying to get everyone locked in with AI and a microchip that will keep us in this vibration where really your souls that could go beyond this vibration if enough of us kind of woke up? Is there, like another spiritual level to this? And they know they've committed to this realm, so they're the masters of this realm. And our best thing we can do is not to come back here. So they're just trying to get everyone conditioned in the reincarnation look to come back here, and then they'll go down the tunnels and then come back out and then repopulate the earth like they did with the Cabbage Patch Babies and stuff like that. And that's the game that they play, to grab as many souls for the fourth dimensional entities to loosh farm, the folks that are here feeding them, if you want. Whereas we're probably the ones that are awake are seeing that this, the old souls maybe and don't want to come back here anymore. So it's our chance to exit. And that's maybe what we're here for, to try and purge ourselves and live a good life and get to that stage in this lifetime. And the other ones that don't see it, they'll have to come back for another loop, So this place can't be saved, and we're heading towards that anyway. So there's going to come a time. What choice do you make? A fork in a road? Are you going to join the 15-minute city? Or are you going to be like Brave New World, one of the savages, and try and live outside of the system for the last few years until... Because like people like Martin Kenny, who now calls himself ZZ, is in the Pinal Foundation, went to Portugal and set up his own nation and trying to live outside the matrix, so to speak. Maybe that's an example for what we can try and do until this event happens that, again, is kind of prophesized the end of the world type scenarios, because maybe we're on a loop,
Yeah.
That's the type of things I think about.
No. I mean, it's these are the things that we should be thinking through. What you're really doing is trying to understand, what is this all about?
Yeah.
Why am I here? What's the purpose? What's going on? And I have my own thoughts on it. I think you and I have talked about it in the past briefly, but for me, this is a classroom. It's it has a curriculum, and Mark Devlin and I did a show about 2 years ago that ruffled a lot of feathers, because I had said that there were no soul traps. It's a trap only to the extent that if you don't figure things out here, it's what you said, you come back. So the soul trap really has to do with your ability to break through the matrix, is to be able to pierce the veil. If you can't pierce the veil, then you're going to keep coming back until you figure out what it's all about. So where I've landed with this is, well, the question I ask myself is, can we really change this place? Because maybe it's not meant to change.
Yeah,
maybe
it's
unchangeable. Yeah. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. So in a sense, we can look at it as a simulation. You're in a particular video game, and use that as an analogy, and it's the way it's coded. It's the way it's programmed. So your objective, or my objective, and others, is to find the keys to the code to be able to move up to the point where you don't have to come back here anymore. So that's where I go with it. That's why when I talk about this stuff, I talk about it from the perspective of trying to get people to wake up to what's really going on, because if that happens, then you're going to pursue that higher level of understanding, higher level of knowledge and wisdom, and you can possibly break yourself free. Now, one of the things that people talk about is the whole soul trap piece of this thing, or people selling their soul. And that's an interesting discussion when you have it, because I come from the school of thought that your physical incarnation doesn't own your soul.
No.
So your physical incarnation, like Mike here, Mike Williams here, in this reality at this moment in time, cannot sell my soul to
Right.
somebody because I don't own my soul.
Right.
This is just a physical vehicle that which the soul operates within for the experience. So I mean, I come from that, and I don't subscribe to the soul trap bit because of that, and also because after 12 years of private practice as a hypnotherapist, and I specialize in past life and spiritual regressions, and I did hundreds of them. That I was able to firsthand to see and hear and understand uh, what this place is all about, what happens when you pass away, what the process is when you pass away, and how it works. So, because when I talk about this, people will say, "Well, how do you know?" Well, I spent 12 years working on it, and hundreds of clients that I took through the process. I'm not going to go into great detail here, um, but that's my take on it. This we have to really understand what is our purpose. Why are we here? Why? And so many people. It's a very basic question, Billy, but so many people they give it no thought whatsoever. In fact, they don't even ask the question. They just wake up every morning, go to work, go to school, whatever, whatever their routine is, come home, go to bed, go to sleep, wake up, and do the same thing over and over again. It's like Groundhog Day.
Do you think like programs like Westworld is
Yeah,
quite good? The first season of that especially, because like we are the robots essentially, and then one or two of them begin to wake up or notice a little difference in the way things was done the day before, and maybe that's the reason for the censorship and stuff like that. Because like if everyone was doing their own thing and being unique, maybe the processing power of this system would struggle to kind of keep everybody, doing that. So that's why it creates loops in these jobs
yeah,
for people to do. And then if you decide to go your own way, it's almost like the universe has to rearrange things to get you to do something that you like, but in an almost routine fashion almost, so that it can give you what you want. That's how some people can achieve a particular dream or whatever, do what they want. And then that's that taken care of. But like again, if everyone was doing their own thing, the system would collapse, and it's not designed to collapse, so it has to censor, it has to do these
yeah.
things. So
That's what it's designed to do. I've tried to explain to friends and family and people I have discussions with that this system is designed to oppress. It's designed to keep you detached from your divine aspect, to keep you away from God, source, and the creator. And at a very simple, straightforward level, the lesson that you should be learning is what is it like to be detached from God, from the creator, from source, whoever your God, creator, source is. What is that like? Is that an enjoyable experience?
yeah,
Right? And for most people, it is not. It is not, because we have been shackled since the day we were born. And the brilliance of this oppressive system is to get people, many people, to believe that they're not oppressed, that the life that they lead and the things that they've got to do in order to survive, you got to pay to live, that's perfectly normal. When on the other hand, the elites, the controllers, they don't have to pay to live. Do you think, I'm not talking to the audience here, do you think for one moment that they have lives like ours? They're sovereign. They do go be whatever they want to go do and be. Not us. We can't do that.
that's the
So
thing as well about sovereignty. There is a whole issue. I've actually joined this community recently, and they've went a wee bit different from the normal sovereignty way, and they're setting up trusts and things like that, and they're dealing in the laws that kind of are made, but we don't understand them properly.
right,
But maybe one guy's came in and taught somebody, and then they've kind of spread this knowledge, and they're trying to get practical results. So, like utility bills or household bills, they're not us personally, and we're not the legal name, and there's a whole field there that we should really know about. But these guys are operating with that knowledge of how the law, supposedly the law, whatever that is, that functions. So they can do certain things, but the profane, the masses are just following orders. Like, I've got a speeding fine by a camera, so it's all the stuff I'm supposed to informing myself, filling all the details in these boxes. I mean, the box is on a piece of paper, it's not actually on the paper, so they know all these tricks.
Right.
So, but I can, instead of just filling that in and paying the money and taking the points, well, I can start to ask questions. Well, where's the evidence? Show me this, show me that, So again, there's a different path. So for again, the profane will just get that bit of paper. The fear, I don't know, I'm ignorant, because you don't learn anything in school, worth knowing. So therefore, people are in a state of weakness, so they just go along with what's presented to them. But actually, if you have somebody who can show you a little bit of knowledge, and then invest time into learning that more, you can actually rebut a lot of things, and then become sovereign through your own diligence of learning the mechanisms that are used to control you.
Right.
Which shouldn't seem like a big ask. The thing is, I'm doing a 40-hour job, which is taking a lot of my time and energy. Then I've got these other projects that I'm trying to do and interview people and whatever. So there's only so many hours in the week to spend on this time on this. It's another thing about working a full-time job is you can't really learn and get into things and do your passion, because you've got to make this certain amount of money to fucking live,
Right. That's right.
It's really quite annoying.
Well, even if you consider yourself to be well-versed in the free man movement or the sovereign movement, what they do is they just resort to force. They resort to arresting you, putting you in jail. A good example of this is Santos Bonacci. Remember from years ago?
Oh, yeah.
I think Santos had accrued a bunch of parking tickets, and it I don't know what the number was, but it added up, and Santos has a lot of knowledge in the area of common law and being a sovereign, and yet he still, I think he wound up having to sit in jail for a bit.
Yeah, he's on the news and everything.
Yeah, and that's not knocking Santos at all. It's just that this system will go to great lengths to squash anything or anybody that is exposing even the slightest crack in the dam.
Well, I took them to court when they lost my job, and basically the judge was pre-judging it before the trial and shut it down, saying I was saying there was no virus, and she was saying, "Oh, Mr. Watson believes that, but there's lots of viruses." So I was like, "Well, you're colouring the outcome with that statement. We haven't had the chance to present any evidence yet." And I wasn't like to speak at all, and it was all a big fucking shit show, because if I'd have got through court with what I was presenting, it would have set a new, how you get these new things that quoted, I would have set a new precedent, because I was saying it's affecting my third eye going through this temperature machine, and it's religious, spiritual a thing, and you can't be doing that. And basically they shut that down and put backed me into a corner and threatened to sue me if I didn't win the final trial. So they offered me X amount just to fucking not take it to the final thing. So they paid me off eventually. But I was the only one in the factory standing up for the fact this is all bullshit. And they sacked me, and I took them to court and they backed me in a corner. But I don't know if I won or not, but it was a bit of a stalemate in the end. But the whole thing just showed me what a fucking fraud the whole so-called justice system is. I've seen it firsthand,
Yeah.
And
You have to pick and choose your battles. This is what I tell people. I do the same thing, because if you're going to try to engage every single aspect of this reality where you're being oppressed, you're being taxed, you're being regulated, you'll spend your entire life fighting this darkness, this evil stuff.
Yeah.
So the way I approach it, people can do obviously whatever they want to do, is I pick and choose my battles. There are some things that do I like. The fact that I've got to pay property taxes on my house. I mean, here in the United States, property taxes are attached to your home, to your property. So even if you own your home outright, you have no mortgage,
Yeah.
you still have to pay the property taxes. And if you don't pay the property taxes, they're going to take your home.
It's crazy. How
Um,
do you own your house then?
you never own your house. What happens is property taxes here in the United States is a perpetual lien on the property. Now, there are going to be people who are listening to this right now say, no, you can fight this. Good luck. I understand conceptually what these people are saying. But as you start to go through the legal system is stacked against you. And the other problem is that of money. So to go through the legal system is going to cost a ton of money.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Do you spend your
Cheaper paying
time
the
going,
politics.
yeah. I mean, do you battle them? Do you go head to head? Do you lock horns with them over property taxes? I mean, I guess you can if you want, but I don't see it as a productive use of my time, given everything else that I've got to focus on in life and other battles that I do wish to take on. So I don't know. Like I said, it's a balance. It's a balance, and where I think where people need to go with this is to ask yourself this question: are you comfortable with where you're at and with what you're doing to live your life truthfully and to live your life um, knowing the things that you know and taking the truth the knowledge you've accumulated and using it in a way where you avoid the traps? That's the most important thing, is to avoid their traps. And that's how I approach my life. There's certain things I won't do. As an example, debt. And I know this is not an easy thing for a lot of people to avoid. But if you can get your debt down or eliminate it, that's a huge trap
Oh yeah.
that they want you to step into. They want you in debt. But if
I've
you
never
can,
had a credit card because I didn't trust myself when I was younger. It's
yeah,
just don't want to go down that route
right,
because it's a slippery slope. And when people get one credit card to get another one, then to pay that one off with that one. Again, there is some people paying these things off because they know the law, or whatever. But it's a whole minefield to go down as well.
yeah.
Uh, but
And there's
uh,
just things you can do, Billy. I mean, that we can do. Everybody. I'm talking to the audience here, not just me and Billy. That you could do to ensure that you're living the best possible life you possibly can, given this reality, what this is all about. If you think you're going to take it on head to head, day in and day out, and do hand to hand battle, forget it. You're going to lose that battle. You're going to lose that fight. I remember Sophia Smallstorm telling me a story. I don't remember who this person's name was, but um, he was he was big into how the monetary system works, right? Fiat money and all that stuff, and contracts and yada yada and all that. And this conversation we had, I guess, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, and he owed the state or the government something like $5, $5.
right.
And instead of paying the $5, he decided that he was going to tangle it up with the government. So what happened was he wound up going to jail. He wound up being detained. And Sophia's telling me this story, and I said, you know what? I said, I understand on principle why he did what he did, but he probably spent $5 on a 6-pack of beer, right?
Right.
That he didn't have to drink. So the question becomes, do you put yourself through the ringer like that for $5? And I know people listening to this right now are saying, "Oh, it's Mike. He needed to do that because those were his principles, and it was wrong that they did what they did to him, and he was going to fight it." But what about all the pain and anguish that took place, all the psychological harm that he put himself through, him and his family, because of that $5? So it goes back to what I was saying before: pick and choose your battles. If I receive something from the IRS, because the IRS is a completely illegal
Yeah.
operation, okay?
Right.
But Setting that aside, if I receive something from the IRS and says you owe us $50 from an audit of your taxes from last year, you know what I'm going to do? Write the check for $50. Because if you don't write that check for $50, the $50 is going to be a lot more once they decide that you're trying to be a thorn in their side, and you're going to wind up paying maybe $500 or $1,000 with penalties and all that, or they'll go back and dig deeper. you know. So anyway,
I basically had that with like a bus lane fine. Like I never paid it, and then I tried to rebut it, and then they just point blank went in and stole money out of my account, my
yeah,
bank account. So then I went to the bank and said, "What are you doing?" And I want the name of the person who authorised that, but they won't give it to me. They send you around in circles, you know.
yeah.
So it's
Well, that's the point. See, that's the point I'm trying to make, and I'm hoping nobody's misconstruing what I'm saying. There are some things that you just, even though if you don't like them, you clear the table of that because it's not worth your time and energy to waste time on some things that are, when we look at the scope of what we're faced with, are minor. They're just minor.
I don't know.
Save your energy and time for the big stuff.
I've got the speeding fine, and I'm about to take that on.
Oh, good. Yeah, stuff like that is fine. I had one of those red light tickets here in the U.S. They have those. They take a picture in an adjacent town, and I fought that. I fought it, and that was it. It went away. They didn't write me back and say you're right. This is another tactic that they use. They will just delete it and forget about it.
It's like they're fishing, isn't it? They're putting a line out there. Are you going to bite?
Yeah.
And, some people bite, and some people say no, and it's like, oh, it's too much hassle to go after him.
Yeah, and they won't say, well, you're right, because based upon the case you put forth, because if you tell other people and other people tell other people, before you know it, their entire house of cards falls apart.
Right.
So that's why they just keep it quiet. They'll just say, okay, we won't respond to him. It'll just go away. And that's what happened in my case.
Just wonder about the people working in these establishments or organisations. Like, they obviously know they're at it, you know what I mean? And they're quite happy to go to their work every day and just, I guess, make money off people's ignorance. And, it's a scary world that the things people just do for money,
Yeah. People will hoard themselves out for money, and that includes the government.
So these cameras going up everywhere as well. Who's putting these things up? And what actually are they? People say that they can be like weapons.
Yeah.
We don't actually know that, but they might get used one day, and then we'll find out.
Let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen a cell tower actually being put together and installed?
No.
It's the biggest mystery in the world. I ask people that all the time. I'll drive down the street one day, and the next day a cell tower, 100-foot cell tower is there. It wasn't there yesterday, but today it's there. And I periodically ask people, have you ever seen a cell tower being built and put up? And they say no.
Locally, during the lockdown, I was, essential workers only, but it seemed to be 5G towers are popping up everywhere. So obviously deemed essential. When I was like going to my son's school and saying, hey, you better not be one of these close to the school and stuff like that, people thought it was nuts. But then two appeared just at the top of the hill at the local garage. And you're right, you're just driving by one day, it's like, oh, look at those fucking things. How'd they get there?
In the town I live in, and I live in a small town, it's a suburb of Raleigh, we have a water tower. And on top of the water tower building, I shit you not, are all of these 5G transmitters and receivers on top of the water tower. So my wife and I, we asked the question, so how does that affect the water that's in the tower?
Oh, totally.
And when I say that there are transmitters and receivers, I'm not talking about like one or two. They must have like 20 or 25 of them on top of this tower.
Is this like the water tower's like a supply for the town? All right,
Yeah, it's a big water tower, and
100% that's getting affected.
of course it is. Of course it is. And this is the ignorance that it just permeates, because how did the town, its planners, its council, how did it allow that? It allowed that because it's ignorant. It has no idea about what the effect could be by having that type of stuff attached to a water tower, or wherever. One of these cell towers they put up right behind the police department, right behind a one of the pharmacies in town, and
So
you
you think
can't tell me.
don't think they're inherently evil? Then you think there's a lot of stupid people out there in the councils.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
I mean, I just, and if you go to these town councils, that's the other thing too. When you go to these town councils and they say, "Oh, its discussion is open to the public," it's really not. The decision's already been made
oh
because
yeah,
they've already secured the funding. A lot of the funding comes from state and federal grants. Um, so anytime they're receiving money from outside the town itself, that money comes with terms and conditions.
yeah,
You have to do X, Y, and Z with it. It's not, we're not giving you money so that you could just do whatever you want to do with it. We're giving you money so that you do what we want you to do
yeah,
with it. And so it's the whole charade of pretending that the public has some kind of input into the process when in fact they do not. That's why, honestly, I haven't paid any attention to any of that stuff for years, because it's a total waste of time. And that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to have you waste your time.
yeah. What did you think of this event that happened recently in Spain and
Yeah.
France? Like, okay, this net zero is absolute madness, obviously, and that's part of again the 2030 madness that's happening. So
Yeah.
they say one day, was it a week later or a couple of days later, we've achieved net zero, and then blackout. Do you think that was like a psyop, or do you think it's just a fuck up? Or
No, it's not a fuck up. It's intentional, and it's what it is. It's conditioning. It's table setting. When they turn around and they say, "Oh, we don't have any idea what happened. We have no idea how they lost the electricity." It was what, France and Spain
in Portugal as well, yeah.
and Portugal.
Yeah.
That's Billy. That's bullshit.
Yep.
They don't know. They don't know.
It was a hacker. It was one hacker
Oh,
somewhere.
there's always a hacker, or they said. I read a couple of articles and actually watched a couple of videos on this where they were saying it was caused by an atmospheric
Yeah,
condition.
that was it.
It's just more nonsense. Eh, When have we ever had an atmospheric condition that
Well,
knocked out the electricity for an entire country?
does this
When has that
government
ever
choose
happened?
to manipulate the weather more as well? You know, it's the weather is dangerous. You know, we need more chemtrails or whatever. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, so what they're going to do is basically table setting, because what they're planning to do, I'm thinking, is there's going to be more of these, a lot more of these, and they're going to say that what they've been talking about, the grid being exposed to hackers and foreign elements, foreign countries, enemies. They've been talking about that stuff for 20 years. Just like they were talking about transhumanism and transgender for 10, 20 years before they rolled that out. It's the same thing. Oh, by the way, they were saying that geoengineering wasn't real. And here in the United States, there's like 15, 20 states that have implemented geoengineering legislation,
All right.
which says they can't spray, but it's nonsense. It's just they're still spraying. Tennessee was one of the first states to push through that legislation. And if you talk to people in Tennessee
Right.
and say, okay, so your sky's nice and blue? Nope.
Right.
Because I was watching a video that Jane Ruby did, and she said that it goes back to the PrEP Act. So even though they have this legislation in various states, I think Tennessee is one of them. I think Florida is another, and there's a couple of others, and maybe another handful that are looking to do it. It has a loophole which says that can't spray the skies unless,
All right.
right, there's some kind of need to do so.
Yeah.
So
So I've heard
it's
about that. It did sound promising, but obviously they've always got a
yeah.
back door. Did you hear about the one in Britain recently? They've officially went ahead with it. We are now geoengineering to dim the sun.
Yes, yes. And what have they been telling people? Geoengineering is bullshit. It's a conspiracy theory. Tinfoil hat wearers talk about this stuff. And today we have legislation in the United States. You have what you have in the UK, where they're saying, yeah, we're going to dim the sun.
I mean, come on, what is this madness? You know what I mean? You're going to fucking what?
Well, where are all the people that were calling us,
Well,
conspirators?
again, I'm a postman, right? So quite often I'll get people at the door saying, "Oh, no so good weather today," or "Good weather today," and I'm saying, "I won't be later because look at those planes up there. They're spraying stuff. Wait to see it in a few hours later. I've been planting a few seeds, you
Yeah.
know, and they probably think I was mental. But now it comes on the news, it's like, oh, maybe that guy had a point because now they're dimming the sun and it's a thing, you know."
Well, the thing is, they roll it out on the news, the legislation here in the U.S., what's going on in the U.K., as if it's always been known. Right? They just roll it out, they just put it out there, and the average Joe and Jane, either it goes right over their heads, and they really don't understand what's going on, or there's apathy. You know,
It really
um,
does my head in because this is the one thing you know we've not got any choice in. You get a choice for a vaccine, you get a choice what crappy food to eat, you get a choice for the water coming out the tap, you can distill it, or but you're literally going outside. What is in this heavy metals? Is this causing Alzheimer's and dementia and Christ knows what else? You know, and basically we're all breathing that in, and there's a beautiful sunny day that's just now completely grey and you can't see anything, just a big grey sky and then
yeah,
torrential downpour for 20 minutes and the car window screen gets covered in a white powder. It's like, how are they fucking doing this? This is not right. Come on,
no,
people, wake the fuck up. You know?
yeah, it's an anti-human agenda, plain and simple, plain and simple. So there's no avoiding it. It's in your water. It's in your crops.
Well,
If
that's the
it's in the
thing as
crops,
well.
it's in the ground.
Monsanto was like creating, you know, anti-geoengineering crops, for want of a better phrase, you know, because
Right,
basically their crops they don't reseed. You have to keep going to the guy to buy it because the seeds don't work. They're
right.
resistant to this, and your natural plants they're all dying off. So therefore, in the future, in your 15-minute cities, we can't grow our own tomatoes or whatever like that. You know what I mean? To share amongst each other, you have to go to the official GMO store to buy them. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they have everything they do is a setup to something else later down the line. And it's always in the beginning, it's always presented either as a conspiracy theory or it is presented as something that is beneficial to us and to humanity. Oh, we really need to do this because things will be better. We want to protect the children. It's always protecting the children or protecting women or protect whatever, right? But it's just a bunch of bullshit, and it's table setting and conditioning for what they have planned 5 to 10 years from now, if even sooner.
Uh, so that's the thing. A lot of conspiracy theories are actually helping the agenda, then, so to speak, because we're putting it out there. So we're doing their work. I guess that's why they let certain things get out, or you know, there's probably all of a sudden one thing will become popular. And it's like not by accident that's getting put out there. You know.
Yeah, they've gotten to the point in a lot of cases where they just don't care anymore because they have realized that so much of the population is so dumbed down and disconnected that they don't have to rebut anything. They can just do it. And there's not going to be any repercussions. The only thing they're going to get is some noise in the line from me or you or others. And we talked about this at the very beginning of the show with all of the censorship and the shadow banning, uh, the the population self-policing, self-censoring themselves, uh, and coming down on other people, trying to browbeat people who are trying to speak the truth. Um, I mean, they're just going to march forward. But the only thing right now I think that they're having problems with um, is the whole thing with the anti-Semitism, Israel, and all that, because um, even as dumbed down and as oblivious people as people could be, when you start to see images of taken place and what's been done in Gaza, and kids that have been killed, women, everything. Like I said, hospitals bombed, schools bombed, reporters, international reporters have been assassinated and shot at. Even as clueless as somebody could be, they see that like, well, what's going on there. So I think that they are having a pretty big public relations issue with that. and we'll have to see. We'll have to see. What happens. The whole, going back to what we were talking about before, the whole thing where the Trump administration is trying to censor speech. That's not gonna work. That's really not going to work. So I'd be interested to see how they try to get themselves out from under that.
What got me with part of that whole debacle, when Trump had Netanyahu there,
Yeah,
and basically he's now saying, "Oh, we're going to give the Palestinians a better life by, removing them all from the country, so we can put, a tourist resort there." Essentially,
yeah,
it's like, who made him president of the world? He thinks he's like Lord and Master of the world. I'm Donald Trump. I'm here to save the world. Like, who gave you that job, mate? You know what I mean? Stick to your
yeah.
own country.
And he came out with that video. Did you see that one?
Oh,
Trump
that
Gaza.
was unbelievable.
Trump Gaza. It was unbelievable. It was so reprehensible and such poor taste
Yeah.
that I don't know. And of course, the supporters will say, "Oh, he didn't have any idea that that went out." I'm like, come on. Stop rationalizing and stop making excuses. You don't think that he knew that people on his staff and his team were making that video and then it was put out on Truth Social, which is his platform? I think it was even put out by him, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. So this is the thing.
Well, again, you don't actually know who is on his. They might have some guy doing it. It might be his so-called thing, but how controlled are these people? Who is doing all their social media? Are they tweeting every day, or is somebody doing it for them? I don't know. He just probably does what he has to do, and there's other folk above him
Yeah.
saying this is happening today, this is happening today, and he's just told to go along with it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, or right, and it's probably what is happening. But the thing is, if something like that goes out, regardless of what the motivations were in the beginning or who told who to do what,
Yeah.
and it actually comes out and it's just reprehensible.
He has to claim ownership for.
He doesn't say anything.
Aye.
He doesn't come out and say that should not have gone out,
Aye.
and whoever put it out, heads are going to roll.
No, he has to claim ownership for it. Somebody's put it out on his behalf. And
Of course,
that,
he's responsible for it. That's management 101. When if you're a manager or especially in big business, and something happens in your organization on your watch.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there's a person in your organization that's screwed up,
Aye.
but ultimate responsibility resides with the person that is managing this, the organization, the function, in this case, the government, the presidency. That's just responsibility and accountability 101.
Aye.
Yeah,
he's some character. He's obviously playing a role, and you just wonder if he's been almost bred for this role for a long time, because there's interviews going back with Larry King, I think, talking about him being the president and stuff like that. Just
I think it's all been scripted, Billy.
Just talk about people getting dumbed down. There's a meme there. I just watched a video just before coming live there about this guy talking about there's lots of teachers these days saying how they cannot teach young children because they have absolutely zero attention span, because they're getting brought up with TikTok and all the rest of it. These very edited videos and stuff like that. So that's a big issue, I think, going forward, because obviously in China, whatever, their children are not getting access, whether TikTok is more of an elevated status or whatever. There seem to be other countries' youth is prospering better, and our youth is getting attacked, and we're losing the ability to sit. I mean, I don't think sitting in a chair in a square box, because I taught in Turkey and I've seen kids very young, and although it's difficult to teach, but they kind of got lower in their chair the more the years went on. To like 16-year-old, and I'm like, get me out of this place, you know.
Yeah.
It's not a very inspiring place, but still, the fact that we can't even teach or get them to sit still is an issue, and there's lots of teachers kind of complaining about this. It seems to be the standard of humanity, the base level, is very much deteriorating. Sometimes you see videos of the 60s, you know, people in the street getting interviewed and are very coherent and, you know,
Yep.
seem to be a lot more well-rounded adults, shall we say, than what we've got coming out schools and whatnot these days.
Well, today, because of all of the years of conditioning and propaganda and brainwashing, adults, you know, because somebody is an adult doesn't mean that they're intelligent. It
I found
doesn't.
that out when I joined the workforce. I was like, there's more children here than there was in fucking primary school.
Yeah. Yeah. So if somebody's a parent, a mother or a father, that doesn't mean because you had a kid that you're actually qualified to raise a child, especially if you're a dumbbell. And what I see all around me all the time are people that really shouldn't be raising children
Oh, yeah.
because they're as clueless, these adults, as many of these teenagers are, and these, you know, in other age groups like in their 20s, like you're saying, just staring at their phones, watching YouTube videos all day, and just doing things that are detached from the world. They're not having direct interaction with other people.
Yeah.
They're reclusive, and they're just playing with their technological toys. Now, there are many parents that do this. I remember a conversation go back a number of years ago. It was at a gathering, and there was this one guy. He had to be about 45 years old, and he's talking to, you know, to the group of people at the gathering about all these stupid shows and videos that he watches on YouTube. And I didn't, you know, I'm on the periphery listening to this, and I'm thinking, seriously, this is how you spend your time? And unfortunately, not everybody, obviously, you know, but there's a lot of people that is how they spend their time. It's a form of escapism in a way, just for them to step outside of whatever their routine is. You know, if they hate their job or whatever, they go home and they just want to do dumb stuff and pass the time.
Yeah. There's a lot of life that's been missed. Back in the day, you know, we would go out and experience life.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, it's quite a lot when I go to the door to give somebody a parcel these days. Lots of young people hardly say thanks. You're lucky if you get a grunt out of them. You're like, you know.
Right.
There's the older generation. Oh, thanks very much. It's common kind of manners, and you just, you know, it's just because they're probably been isolated. You know, and they don't have these social skills. They're
Right.
they're not even skills. You know, they're just basic humanity tendencies, shall we say, whatever. But it's kind of getting bred out of people with this blue screens, and again, these screens are like, apparently they're flashing or taking pictures every 30 minutes. You don't know what is coming off of these screens, you know.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Matt Landman the other day there, and he's talking about, you know, lots of the fires in America could be getting like the energy meters, smart meters, have got batteries in them. And the same with the phones. I think there was the case of the pagers in Iraq or something like that. And people thought the pagers were blown up, but it was actually mobile phones. They've got this technology in these phones that they can be a dangerous weapon as well. So
Yeah.
we shouldn't really be playing with all this technology. You know, it's got benefits. The sellers on what we think are the benefits, but actually, it would be better if you had to use computers just hardwiring stuff, and these all, you know, the EMFs that are going around and their excuse to put up the mobile phones. And yeah, it's just a crazy world at the end of the day. You know, everything you look at is some form of fucking insanity behind it.
It is. It's an insane world. Talking about the smart meters, I don't have a smart meter in my house. I opted out, and because I opted out, they charge me $15 a month because I opted out, which is fine. Okay, fine. To me, it's $15 well spent. I don't have that smart meter attached to my home, but it's interesting. Every month, I get a report from the energy company that tells me which parts of my home are consuming the most electricity. So it says bedroom, kitchen, living room. I'm thinking,
How do you know that?
well, how do you know the layout of my home,
Exactly, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if I don't have a smart meter, and the meter itself says it's not a smart meter, and I got a guy that comes once a month, he reads it. I've actually seen him. Uh, they're still getting this information. I guess that's the point I'm making. So whether you have a smart meter or not, and I don't recommend getting a smart meter,
Yeah.
but the surveillance state is such that whether you have it or not, one way or another, they're going to get the information that they're looking for. So it boggles my mind. How do you know my kitchen? And how do you know my bedroom versus my family room?
Yeah, and not only that, how do you know how much power is getting used in each of these rooms?
Exactly. And it's at Billy, it's broken out that way. It's itemized by room in the house.
That's crazy. It's not like you just have an outside meter and that's your total amount.
Right. It should be the total home. And then they measure it against a energy efficient home, which actually doesn't exist. These are numbers that they make up so that they can fuck with you and make you think that your home is not energy efficient. Just realize that what they're telling you is an energy efficient home does not exist. So you're being measured against a ghost,
Right.
right? And then they'll measure your home against the average home in your area. So God only knows how they accumulate and aggregate and average out that data. But like the funny part though is no smart meter yet. They know exactly where my electricity goes in what room of my house.
But I think there is some of these masks do have the capability of actually imaging your house. Although
Yeah.
it's not
Hmm.
telling you that, but apparently they can actually visualize and see shit as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. The police use that. The
Aye.
police use that to be able to see through the walls
Yeah.
and to understand if they're like staking a house out or they have to go uh, uh, do something over at the house. Let's say they were called or whatever. They could see who is or who's in what room or how many people are in what rooms.
Aye. Here's another thing that's annoying me these days. Basically, when you go to gigs these days, it seems to be after lockdown more so than before. See the amount of people that talk all the way through the band and stuff like that. You know what I mean? You're trying to listen to it, and some people think their conversation's more important than the
Yeah.
artist, whatever you've paid to listen to. It's like, where is your basic manners? And then, like, I was at a gig a couple of weeks ago, and it was in the seated area. It was unrestricted view, so I couldn't see that well. When the support act was on, it was actually Ian Jury's son, called Baxter Jury. And this guy, young guy, was talking to his girlfriend that seemed to be in his family beside her. And I was like, tapped him on the knee. He's like, "Are you going to keep this up for the rest of the gig, mate?" And he looked at me as if I was completely insane. I was like, "What a silly question! What are you accusing me of here? I'm doing nothing wrong, you know." And basically, then this other guy started talking behind me, and I kind of looked at him and said, "You got a problem?" I said, "You're talking a bit loud." And he said, "All right, okay." He was a bit quiet, so this
Yeah.
young guy's obviously heard me. But he just continued to keep talking and stuff like that, and just really all the way through the support act. So I was like, "Fuck this!" Took my girlfriend down to the ground level. Said to the security guard, "There's a guy up there talking. He keeps talking. It's going to be an issue. Can I get into the stalls?" So the guy wrote me a little pass. Went into the stalls area, got down to the second row at the front, and had a much better gig experience. So I was looking up at him back there, saying, "Fuck you, mate. But thanks very much." But that was a good outcome of it. But in general, I just find it so unbelievably irritating. Like, it's even worse. It sometimes happens at comedy gigs as well. Like, there's
Yeah.
a poet or comedian on, and some people are talking through that. It's like, fucking shut up, you ignorant cunt.
It's just that whole narcissistic, self-absorbed rudeness. It's Billy. They do it everywhere. If you go to the doctor's office, there's some nitwit on the phone having a conversation in a regular speaking voice with everybody else sitting around as if we're interested in your conversation. Newsflash, not interested. Either
Aye,
step outside or turn that fucking thing off
aye, basically.
and have some courtesy. It happens in restaurants. People, "Oh, I got to take this phone call." In fact, it happens on airplanes as well.
Right.
So I remember one time when I was working in the corporate world, I got on this airplane, and this guy was on the phone. It was before takeoff. Like, it was back in the day. I don't know whether they still have you turn the phones off. Maybe they do. I don't know. But back in the day, you had to turn your phones off before there was takeoff.
We could do airplane mode these days.
Yeah. So this particular guy, the flight attendant comes down the aisle and says, "You got to turn your phone off now." And this guy just keeps talking, and he's like wheeling and dealing like he's some big business mogul. So I was sitting in the seat. He was sitting, there was the aisle. I was sitting here. He was sitting there. So finally, I leaned over to him and I said to him, "Wrap the call up. Nobody cares about how important you think you are." All right. So he just looked at me, and I'm just looking at him like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Aye.
Like, somebody's got to tell you to do something that should just be common sense.
Yeah.
The flight attendant already told you, please shut the phones down because we're getting ready for takeoff. And you just ignore that because obviously you're far more important than the plane taking off.
So these people think they're special.
Yeah, they think they're
I'm not
special.
one for following rules. In fact, there's a rule there. I'll tend to break it, but there's certain lines of decorum. You know what I mean? There's certain situations that
common courtesy is not a rule, right? I mean, common courtesy is something that's just implied. You should know when that you should be doing certain things.
Aye.
And you have to be a narcissist. You have to be so self-absorbed that you're engaging in that behavior and that you don't care about anybody else in the room.
Yeah. Some people are trying to say that narcissism is like a form of neurodivergency because everyone's trying to be neurodivergent these days, it seems, They're trying to, I don't know if you noticed this one, like, oh, I went to doctor, I've now got ADHD, or I've got this and I've got that. And, I don't know, I just think it's more excuses just for not getting a grip of yourself.
Yeah, narcissism has been programmed and conditioned into people. It's if we even go to social media, everybody wants to be a celebrity, a star. Everybody wants to be important. Everybody wants the likes. It's a fake version of that person. So what they put out on social media is nothing more than an attention getter. It's a dopamine hit.
Mm.
And I see that as just conditioning. It's social engineering to get people into that mindset. And then, of course, that cascades into other areas of your life, like going to a restaurant and talking loud into a phone when you have the entire restaurant filled with people. Nobody wants to hear your conversation, okay? Nobody wants to hear it.
Yeah, like
Same
I was on
thing.
a bus. I was in Belfast and I was going to get the airport bus for about an hour and I was a bit tired and I thought there was a radio on or something like that and I'm trying to get a little bit of sleep before getting the flight. And then my girlfriend points out there was a guy 3 rows back with his phone just watching a TV show or something,
Yeah.
blasting it really loudly. And I was fucking raging for the next 20 minutes. Like I was so desperate to say something to this guy, you know what I mean? I bit my tongue, but I seen him at the airport and that as well a few times, and I was going to say, there was no need for that. Get a set of headphones. I think he might have been wearing headphones or something as well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, fucking stick them on and turn it down. Just geez, fucking peace from your pish.
Right.
If it was, I don't know, if it was a bit of music or something, to some extent I wouldn't have bothered so much, but it was some kind of chatty thing. It's just, there wasn't, but the whole bus had to listen to it, you know what I mean? Because again, he thought he was special, whatever. But people really do wind me up.
That's the mentality. The mentality is I'm going to do what I want to do. Fuck everybody else. I don't care what anybody else thinks.
The way he's walking, his swagger again.
Yeah,
I'm Mr. It, you know.
There's no decorum. There's none of that. There's no extending courtesy out. It's all about them.
Aye.
So that's why, honestly, Billy, I don't. I just kind of keep to myself. It's my wife and I. We have our immediate family. We have the grandkids and stuff like that. And I would much rather spend my time that way than to. I won't get me wrong. I have to step out into the world because I got to do things, but I don't know.
I've got a couple of pictures here I'll share with you before.
Yeah.
What do you think of this one? Have you heard this kind of rumor? basically, the guys that went to the moon were actually from Alcatraz. And it's like almost like they've done a deal. You'll go and lie to the world, and
Yeah.
we'll pretend you went to the moon, and that was their way out. Because you kind of wonder, they've had to hold on to this thing for all their life. Even though Buzz has kind of admitted it quite blatantly a few times. But anyway, just thought, if you heard of that one, any thoughts on that?
About the moon landing?
No, about that's they say that those Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were like prisoners from Alcatraz. Can you see that picture?
Yeah, I see the picture. Yeah.
So it's saying that those prisoners were them, and they've basically, I don't know. If it's
I don't
true or
know.
not.
I mean, I can't comment on it because I
I
don't
just
know. I
thought,
mean, I see similarities. I'm not going to say I don't see similarities. Like I'm looking at the ears on Buzz Aldrin.
that's
Um, I don't know. I don't know.
just putting that one out there because you just wonder what the guilt. I watched the wee thing just before coming on live as well with Stanley Kubrick. When he admitted that he'd done the moon landing, so he said it was his best work.
Yeah.
But in some ways, he had a lot of guilt. He was drinking and stuff over it. So anyway, there's another wee picture here. This is obviously Claus has just decided to resign out of the blue, and we've got another guy who believes that water's not a human right. But anyway,
Oh, that
yeah,
guy from Nestle.
uh,
I have that video actually. I have that video on my very early YouTube channel where he came out and said that water is not a human right.
we're going to charge you for water now.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah. Well, they're privatizing everything. See, when they say private, they're going to privatize. That means it's going into the corporate matrix, into the corporate control system. That's what privatization means.
aye. And we've not talked much about music these days, but I sent you a wee clip of Jimmy Page. Did you watch? Did you? I think it's on Netflix.
I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. In fact, I have it on my desktop in a folder, and I was going to watch it today. I was
Alright.
going to try to watch it before the show, but I just did not have time.
It wasn't much. It was just a couple of clips. I mean, I do have them here, but basically, it was the documentary is about how Led Zeppelin became famous.
Yeah.
So it goes into like Jimmy Page when he was younger, and then he started to get the studio gigs. And at one point, he basically says, "Oh, I've done lots of sessions. I've done sessions for the Kinks, the Rolling Stones, a couple others." I went, but not the Beatles. And just the way he'd done it, it just seemed a bit too much. He doth protest too much, kind of thing. I just wonder what you thought.
Well, Jimmy put a post up going back a number of months ago. I don't know whether it was on Instagram or Twitter. It was sent to me, and it was a legitimate post that he had put up. And he had said that he played on A Hard Day's Night. He played on the Hard Day's Night album.
All right.
Okay. So, I put it up on my community tab on my Beatles YouTube channel. And there were some people saying, oh, no. He means he played on the soundtrack, the instrumental tracks
Right.
that they had. I said, that's not what he said. He did not say, I played on the soundtrack, the songs that George Martin had put together for the movie. He said he played on the Hard Day's Night album. And the key to it is that the Hard Day's Night album, we have to remember that the Beatles' official albums were the UK releases on the Parlophone label. It was not the Capitol albums. Now, in the US, the Hard Day's Night album had both actual compositions and soundtrack filler tracks. I call them filler tracks. They're very uninteresting. But in the UK, the Hard Day's Night album was the Hard Day's Night album. There was no music from the movie, and there were 13 original tracks on A Hard Day's Night, allegedly written by the Beatles themselves. It was the first album where every track was supposedly written by them. So Jimmy had put that up there, and he clearly said he played on the Hard Day's Night album. The other thing is that I know a guy that was very close to a very good friend of Dan Peek. Now, Dan Peek was one of the founding members of the band America. And America was produced by George Martin as well. And the guys from America there were military ties, backgrounds to all of these guys, the three guys that formed America. Now, the person that I know, and again, very good friend of Dan, and knew him very well. And he passed away, I think, back around 2012, around there. He died fairly young. But he told me that the friend that I know, the person that emailed me, he emailed me a number of times. He said that Dan told him that Jimmy Page played the lead guitar on "I Saw Her Standing There."
All right.
Okay.
Well, he vehemently denies it. It's just like, not the Beatles. It's just like, no, I'm not believing that, you know.
Yeah. Well, the whole Beatle thing is it's like everything else. People are so conditioned. It's Billy, 60 years of brainwashing just jackhammered into people's heads, and that's why it's very difficult for people to let go of it. It's for so many people, it's the soundtrack of their life, and the Beatle music makes them happy, and they love to play it, hear it, and so on. But
Yeah, I went to see a Beatles tribute band, the bootleg Beatles, just because there's this site called Twickets, and you can get
yeah,
cheap tickets in the
yeah.
last minute. So it was a night out, but I was just desperate to shout, "Paul is dead!"
I went to a Beatles tribute show, the Fab Four, and I've seen them a couple of times. They're very good. I've seen Rain. They're very good. They put on a nice production. There's another one called Abbey Road. I've seen them maybe two or three times. But just to go out, my brother and I would just go, just kind of take a listen. And when I went to go see the Fab Four, there was these two guys sitting behind us, and they had no idea who I was. And they were talking about, well, there's this conspiracy about Paul McCartney dying in 1966, and it's just ridiculous. Paul's always been Paul, and I was chuckling to myself, and I thought to myself, first of all, they have no idea who's sitting in front of them, and they also have no idea how much they don't know. They just don't look into it. You and I've talked about this so many times. They don't do the research because the research would be just too troubling. It's just going to rock their world, and they just don't want to deal with it.
In this documentary, I don't know if you can get the chance to watch it. It's on. I'm not even sure it's on Netflix or Disney or one of those channels. How We Became Led Zeppelin or something. I can't even remember the right title, but there was a bit in it. Might have been John Paul Jones, is it?
John Paul Jones was the bass player. Yeah.
He might. Somebody says, these sessions. Basically, you have to be on the ball. Just what we know is just you have to be in there doing it, because if you don't do it, I think maybe Jimmy Page said, if you can't go in there and do it exactly, then you get fired.
Right.
So it's a case of they had to be on the ball doing it just like that, or just again, if the Beatles are talking about they're not great musicians, it doesn't tie up with what he's saying. And
no, it's like they said that they banged out 10 of the 14 songs in one session in February of '63 for their first album, Please Pleasing, which was released on March 22nd of '63, 322. And like you said, Billy, there has to be extreme competence in the musicianship when you have those types of sessions. So 10 songs, banging that out in one day or one long session, let's say it was 12, 13, 14 hours, that's studio session player time periods in which to record. It's not the Beatles. There's an article that goes back to 1971 out of New Music Express, where New Music Express was talking to Norman Smith, who was the Beatles engineer from Please Please Me through Rubber Soul, and Jeff Emmerich picked up the engineering starting with Revolver. And in that interview, Norman Smith said that he was not impressed by the Beatles. They failed in the studio, and they had a very difficult time getting Love Me Do down. And so, when you start to dig into these stories, especially with Paul McCartney in June of 1966 in Japan, saying that we never said that we were great musicians, we're adequate. And then in the interview he did with the BBC on August 5th of 1966, which was the same day that Revolver was release. And he repeats that. He again says, we never said that we were very good musicians. We were limited as a group. He said that they didn't play on Yesterday, which completely contradicts the official narrative because he allegedly played acoustic guitar on the song.
Right.
And then you take a look at the Rubber Soul sessions and you take a look at those 14 songs, how they were being banged out like it was widgets being manufactured on a conveyor belt, on a manufacturing line. The only way, if those songs were recorded during those sessions, in other words, the instrumental tracks were recorded, the only way that could have gotten done was with studio musicians, highly skilled, highly competent musicians to bang the songs out the way they were recorded during the Rubber Soul sessions. There's no other way. It's not adequate musicians or musicians who aren't musically very good, limited. There's no way they can do that. So so there's all the telltale signs. You and I have talked about this so many times in shows. The telltale signs are out there. It's the truth is hidden in plain sight, but people just have to they have to look at
Yeah.
what is difficult for them to look at and and critically think and be objective. But so many people don't want to do that.
Yeah. Just before we split, there's a guy here saying he's Scottish and he's wondering if you can pick up my lingo. How's my accent for you? Because sometimes we get comments in the YouTube channel. Can't understand a word I say.
I understand everything you're saying. See, here's the thing. When I get those comments, I delete them because to me, when people say stuff like that, I can't understand anything Billy's saying, blah blah blah. To me, look, you need to break out, okay, of whatever your sphere of influence is. You need to, broaden your horizons and be a little more worldly. Now, when I was in the corporate world, I used to work on large projects, and these projects involved people from all over the world. So I worked with people from Scotland, from Ireland, worked with the Japanese, with the French, with the Spanish, from all over, the Germans. So everybody has an accent and they have a different dialect.
Yeah.
And what happened with me over the years is that I became so accustomed to the different languages and the different ways that people speak and pronounce that I understand it. I don't have any problem whatsoever when you and I talk, understanding what you're saying. The only time I might say, if I say, "Oh, what did you mean by that?" is because maybe I didn't get the context, not because I didn't understand what you were saying. So, to be honest with you, I get extremely irritated when people put those types of comments in the comment section because all you're doing when you do that is you're showing a level of ignorance that I just don't want to deal with. I really don't. I
We had
really
a
don't.
we had a comment on Twitter yesterday. I'm not sure if it was sarcastic, but somebody, because you're sharing sometimes I post things and you kindly share it, and somebody says, "Oh, well done in your sterling efforts to promote the work of Billy Watson. He is a great guy." And then so I was then not too sure if he was being genuine or not. And then you're like, "He's a friend."
Yeah.
And he does some guy dancing with a love heart behind as if it's some kind of.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why are people cunts?
There are so many people out there that just do idiotic things, and I do the best I can to get that stuff off the table on my platforms. I don't hesitate whatsoever, 1 second, Billy, at all, whatsoever, to if I pick up on somebody as being a nitwit or trolling,
Aye.
boom, you're out of here. I don't care. I'm not interested in the number of comments. I'm not interested in the number of subscribers. What I'm interested in is people who can conduct themselves in an adult fashion and have civil discourse. And the discourse is productive. I don't care if you disagree with me. Be productive about it. If
Well,
you're going to cuss and you're just going to type in all caps and make and put little emoji laughing faces on there, that's childish behavior. I have no time for that. And so you're out of here. And I don't care if you thought you were being funny or you didn't mean anything bad by it. You're out of here. It's, we have to raise the bar, Billy. As you know, we have to raise the bar. Otherwise, the stupid stuff will continue.
Just to go back to where we started, there's those two comedians that dragged me off the stage that time. I say comedians, but basically, I put a picture of me with this Stephen Hughes and a couple of friends, and just saying a little bit of the background, what had happened, and how he can say it, and I can't say this word. And then I got a comment of some guy saying, "Oh, the N word is very bad, and all these reasons why into it, and you're a bad person if you use it, blah blah blah." And I was like, "Can't be bothered with that," so I deleted it. But one of those guys had screenshotted it and then shared it on their page to say, "Oh, look, Billy's deleted this." And the other one was like, "Oh, he believes in free speech. Why isn't he keeping that one up? Blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, because it's a fucking stupid comment and I can't
Exactly. Look, I know we're stretched for time here, but let me just explain. What I've explained to my audience and to other people is that my platforms, think of your platform as your home. Now, would you invite somebody into your house who's going to be obnoxious, belligerent, nasty, screaming and yelling? Would you tolerate that for 1 second? No. You would tell that person, "There's the door, please leave," and you'd kick them out. So my platforms and your platforms are the same thing. If somebody's going to come in and if they think they're going to be disruptive or they're going to act like a clown and that they're not adding value to whatever the discussion is, I don't waste any time getting rid of them. And I've had that too. "Oh, you're censoring." Look, I'm not censoring. You're being a knucklehead. You're being a nitwit. You're being a troll. You're out of here. It's as simple as that. I'll tell you what free speech is. Here's free speech. You can go create your own platform and talk about whatever the fuck it is you want to talk about. Period. That's free speech. You have the ability to go do that. You have the ability to go talk freely, at least for now, but that doesn't mean that everybody else has got to listen to you. Right? Yeah. Free speech does not mean that I have to listen to you.
Yeah, but they threw me off the stage and stopped my free speech, but they could say it. I mean, they weren't even running a gig, but if they were running a gig, at the end of the day, surely the whole point of a stage is that's my chance for my free speech.
Right.
And it's up for the audience to decide to laugh or not. And then if they laugh or don't laugh, whatever, and then they can choose to book me again or not book me again. Actually hauling me off.
Right.
Is not right, But basically, yeah, I do believe in free speech. There's certain instances where, again, you say to people, "Well, don't switch a channel," was the old one. You don't like it, switch a channel instead of bitching about it. Go somewhere else. But when you've got your own platform and you're on stage, that is your place to speak your truth.
And it's like when you go on stage, the person that's leaving the comments we were just talking about is the person that's heckling in the room.
Aye.
Should we tolerate the heckler, or do we have the heckler removed from the room? I mean, in other words, there's free speech, but there's decorum.
Yeah, I think a heckler can be all right if they're adding something to the show, if they're being inventive and creative, and then it's a challenge for the comedian to come back. But when they're just being rude and abusive,
right? That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. If you're going to be rude and abusive, if you're going to engage in that type of behavior, and I don't really see, look, everybody can do whatever it is they want to do, manage their platforms the way they want to manage them. But I just do. I've seen so much stupidity, having been in this business for so long, that my tolerance level for that stuff is zero. It's zero. And if you catch me on a bad day, it's less than zero. Other days I have more tolerance for it. I'll put it up or whatever it may be. I'll just comment back or whatnot. But generally speaking, I am not going to contaminate and pollute my comment section with people who want to contaminate and pollute the comment section. Because what a lot of them are doing, a lot of the trolls, what they're trying to do is to pull the attention away from the message that's being given in the interview or the show. And they just want to, kind of swirl around the drain. They're trying to suck it down. I won't allow it. And I know there are people that will disagree with me, but like I said, I manage my platforms my way. You manage your platforms your way, and it's the way it is.
Yeah, well, I've noticed you sticking up for me a couple of times there, so thanks very much for that in the comments.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, when comments come in about your quote accent, I have no patience for it whatsoever. I mean, if it slips through the cracks, but typically I catch them
Yeah,
and they get deleted. I have no patience for that.
that's cool. So, is there anything you'd like to finish before we wrap up?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, most of my time these days is being spent on a music project that I call the Yesteryear Project, and what I'm doing is going back to songs that I wrote 40 years ago. One of them back to 1979, which is 46 years ago. They were demos, unreleased demos that have been, sitting on a shelf. Some of those songs were recorded in studios, 8-track and 16-track. Others were recorded on a reel-to-reel. Others on at home on a cassette. So I have been going through the songs and re-recording them, reimagining them, not making exact copies because they were demos, and also because my brother and I want to, uh, you know, do the songs today. Now that we're in our mid 60s, and what do those songs sound like 40, 45 years later? So it's a really fun project. It's a lot of work, and that's why I'm just not doing a lot of YouTube videos and stuff like that. I'll do them here and there where I can, but I'm too focused on the music project right now to hop back into YouTube interviews and research and stuff like that. Maybe when I'm done with the project.
I just
Uh,
had to look at your YouTube channel before coming on here, and I never seen the video. I'll have to go and watch it. But you've got quite a few guitars to choose from. What you're going to play in each track? That must be a headache.
yeah, I mean, I have a lot of guitars. I've been playing guitar ever since uh, seriously since I was about 15 years old. So we're talking about 50 years. And so, yeah, I do have a large guitar collection, although I have sold a number of them off over the last 2 years or so to kind of
Right.
whittle the inventory down. But
But you do the work on them as well, don't you? You kind
yeah,
of file them down and present them.
yeah, I used to do a lot of guitar repair, guitar upgrades. I did everything. I did fret work. I put on new fretboards, electronics, upgrades with pickups, all of that stuff. And but that's slowed up now because I've worked on all the guitars that I have worked on, but I still have that skill, and I still apply that skill whenever I have to do guitar setups and stuff like that. So, and I had a channel that was kind of dedicated to that. It's in archive mode now, but
Right. They look like a
yeah,
nice collection anyway.
yeah. A couple people wrote and said, well, it's some high end stuff there, like the Heritage and the Eastman and my Gibsons. And they said, what are your thoughts on guitars under $500? And so I thought, you know what? Down the line, what I'll do is I'll do a video on guitars that are under $500 that I have that are just great playing guitars. So I'll do that when I have time.
Did you not release one of these songs recently from the project?
No, I haven't released. I haven't released it as an album yet. So what I'm doing is,
I just thought I seen you put out a song recently somewhere.
oh, what? Well, I might have put it up on Twitter. So here's how the songs you can hear them, and I'll give you the link, Billy, so you can put it down in case anybody in the description box, if anybody's interested. I have released them on my SoundCloud and my Reverb Nation sites, but they have not been released yet as part of the album that I'm going to release with these songs. So the objective is to release an album.
Yeah.
But the songs, as I finish them, I do upload them to my SoundCloud and my Reverb Nation site. Those are my music sites, and people could take a listen to them there. My goal is to not only release it for streaming and all that stuff, but also to release it on vinyl.
All right.
Yeah. So that's my goal, and I found a company that will press the vinyl, and I don't have to have 1,000 pressings. So that's going to be a lot of fun to do
What about
that.
what about your previous albums then, Hollow Moon and stuff like that?
CDs and streaming.
Right.
So in the beginning, like Leaving Dystopia, which goes back to 2013, CDs was still kind of a big thing. And as we got into 2018 with Hollow Moon, CDs, where people were still buying them, but streaming at that point had become the de facto way that people listen. So, so buying or having CDs manufactured or vinyl manufactured in quantity is you're going to lose money because you're not going to be able to sell them because too many people are so accustomed to just streaming the music through the streaming sites like Spotify or going to SoundCloud and such. So yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of sad in a way. The physical,
Yeah, I still get lots of physical CDs. I'm coming down on them, but I prefer having the physical thing. And
yeah,
yeah,
I have vinyl. I mean, I still have a lot of vinyl. I had a huge Beatle collection of vinyl, and I sold off a big chunk of that.
uh,
I met this guy, really good guy, and he sells on eBay. And I got to talking to him about, I want to sell these records. He says, "All right, man." He goes, I'll sell them for you." He said he gets a piece of the action,
yeah.
but he's been very fair. I mean, the lion's share of the sales come to me, but I offloaded a lot of Beatle vinyl over the last year or so.
I mean, what beat of vinyl is there apart from their albums? Was there like bootlegs and stuff like that, or
There were bootlegs. There were albums that were collections of song greatest hits, like the Red and Blue album, as an example. You had Beatles rarities. You had various different compilation types of albums, uh, that type of stuff. There, I mean, there's no shortage of uh, how the Beatles machine has turned out and regurgitated
hey,
recordings under uh, you know different product headings. The Love album, as an example, from when they were doing the Vegas act, just stuff like that. And I had lots and lots of that stuff. There were concert albums, as an example, Billy, Wings Over America, and Tripping the Live, fantastic. That was another one of his live performances. Just tons of stuff like that.
right. Okay, all good. Thanks very much again for your time, Mike. If you're hanging around, I'll say goodbye to you. And
Okay, Billy, thank you so much.
yep, everyone else, thanks for watching. My next one I've got lined up is I've got Guy Anderson next Friday at 1 o'clock. So we've also got John O'Looney coming up as well soon, so that should be interesting. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.